we've done good things. It's like if we have a garden, then we're going to pull out the weeds, but we also have to water the good plants. We also have to fertilize and take care of the good plants. If we ignore the good plants because we're so busy pulling out the weeds, the good plants will wither. So therefore, we can think, oh, I have a problem with my anger. I get angry so easily. But I'm quite generous. I like giving to other people. It gives me happiness to give to other people. So that's a good thing. Yes, I'm going to work on my anger. That's my practice. I'm going to read books on how to deal with anger, and I'm really going to put it into practice. This is good. And all those people who irritate me, I'm going to be so grateful to them because they're helping me in my practice to be patient. But at the same time, I can recognize that I have this impulsive generosity, and I can increase it. I can be even more generous. Generous not only with gifts, but generous with my time, generous with my help. And so in that way, we water that plant, so it grows bigger and stronger. By appreciating it, giving it the sunlight of our attention, and rejoicing in that. And rejoicing in the goodness of other people that we know. How kind they have been. Or things you notice, every day, little kindnesses that people do to each other. Notice it. Don't just ignore it and zero in on everything which went wrong. I mean, like if you're driving along the road in India and we are endlessly, caught up in all the things which people are not doing right. He's a taxi driver. A good one. But people are endlessly forgetting what that line in the middle means and endlessly stopping without any kind of indication and going right when they're indicating going left and so forth. And so it's very easy to get very, worked up about, other people's driving. But then somebody does something courteous. They pull over to allow you to go past. They pull back so that you can go past. Or they do, they wave and smile or something, to remember that. Along with, the problems, there are also the good things that people do. Just naturally. And so to remember that. That is empathetic joy. It means this. And also, all right, somebody gets something that you want. You wanted that, but they got it. To be happy for them. To imagine how happy they must feel to get that. So you're happy for them. Never mind. I mean, imagine a football match or a cricket match in which everybody was just as happy for the opposite side to win. I mean, somebody's got to win, someone's got to win, so let's be happy for both sides. So that's also mudita, is that when somebody gets something that we would like, it's the antidote to jealousy and envy. Instead of being upset that somebody gets something we want, we are happy for them. We imagine if I was them, I would feel so happy, so I'm happy because they're the same as me. This is also a very important quality of the mind. Just to rejoice in others' happiness, even if it seems to cut our happiness. Like if people make lots of noise, instead of getting all upset and irritated, think, oh, they're enjoying themselves. Let them be happy. I have a commentator out there. So it's this quality also of not always seeing everything from our own point of view, but seeing things from the point of view of the other and sharing in their happiness. So that gives us infinite opportunities to be happy. When something good happens to someone else, we can be so happy for them. So this is another very important quality of the mind to learn. How to be happy in the happiness of others. And the last quality is called upeksha, and it means an even-mindedness, equanimity, but here it means basically an impartiality or even-mindedness in that we are not loving and caring and you know, endlessly looking out just for the people who are close to us. Our family, our people from our nationality, or people from our social standing, and so forth. Those we're nice to, and we're kind to, and we help out. And everybody else we don't care about. Or that people who we think are distant, not our race, not from our social standing, not from our family, they are regarded as enemies. And we hope that something bad is going to happen to them. When something bad does happen, we rejoice. Oh, that's wicked. I mean, you know, when sometimes that happens, isn't it? You know, some apparent enemy of the people, something bad happens, everybody feels so pleased that something bad happened. That is a very low state of mind. And so upeksha is different from that. Upeksha wishes to be friendly, compassionate, and rejoicing in everybody. Unconditional. You see, what we are trying to develop is unconditional love, unconditional compassion, unconditional joy, and that sense of impartiality, that we recognize that all beings want to be happy, all beings want to avoid suffering, and we wish them for them. So any love or affection which is only limited to our family, our tribe, our country, is very conditioned, very narrow. All beings, we have so much more in common than we have not in common, despite language, despite appearance, despite cultural customs and religions. At the heart of it all, we're very much the same. And to recognize that. Just as I wish to be happy and free from suffering, all beings wish to be happy and free from suffering. It's so simple. It's so obvious if you say it. But how many do it? So this again, this is why these are also called not only the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes, they're also called the illimitable or immeasurable. Because it makes the heart vast and open and wide and covers the whole universe without any exceptions. The mind just becomes vast, filled with loving kindness, filled with compassion. Whoever comes within the orbit of that, it's like the sun, it shines. It doesn't say, I'm not shining on that lot over there, they're out of favor. It just shines. Whether we close the doors and windows is up to us, but the sun is shining. It's totally impartial. Just shines. And that's how our heart should be, just shining. So again, tomorrow that will be dealt with. There will be some meditations on cultivating these very important qualities of the heart, which stem right from the time of the Buddha, and have been incorporated into all Buddhist traditions as a very, very important training, not just for the head, but this one is for the heart. Because often people they've been practicing for 20, 30 years, but basically they're not really nicer people. And it's because I think we tend to get caught up in intellectual understanding means I understand. But it doesn't. That's still blocked in the head. It hasn't come down into the heart. And until it comes into the heart, it's not real. And when we die, it's gone. Our intellectual knowledge goes. It's only what we've cultivated within us, the depths of our being, that will travel with us. So it's very important that we really, really work on transforming our inner being and making ourselves genuinely a repository of the Dharma. So that naturally we will embody the ideals. It's not just some nice thoughts that we have. They become who we are. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. But the good news is that inherently we all have it, right? It's not that we have to get it from somewhere else. What we have to do is dig down deep. It's like if our hearts were like a big desert, but we know that underneath there is an underground ocean. And so we start digging, and at first it's just dry. But if we keep digging, if we keep doing these meditations over and over and trying to inculcate this into our lives, then gradually the soil begins to get damp. And you feel, yeah, there's something there. So we keep digging and digging and digging. And then suddenly, whoosh, it all comes up, this huge big fountain of everlasting love, compassion. Because it's our true nature. It's all there, it's just gotten covered up a bit. So that's the good news. Don't be so worried, it's good news. Okay, so are there any questions? Oh yes. I have very strong memories in my heart of practicing, particularly Tibetan Buddhism in my last life. And I've had many experiences in this life to do with Tibetan Buddhism. However, I feel very frustrated in terms of where to begin with serious study and practice. I currently have no teacher as such, and my knowledge and practice is patchy. How do I progress? Where do I begin in terms of cultivating a strong foundation? Well, I hope this talk has said something to you. I think that a strong foundation, it should be in Shine and Bodhicitta, to read basic books on Buddha Dharma. We don't have to get into high philosophy, but just, what are the foundations of Buddhist thought? We should understand very clearly. And I would say do some guided retreats, because if we try meditating all by ourselves right from the start, then we are likely not only to pick up bad habits, but also not really understand exactly what we're doing, and maybe, you're sitting there and the mind's going all over the place, and you think, oh, well, maybe it's tea time, and that's the end of that session. If you're in a guided retreat, you can't do that. Thoughts of tea may come, thoughts of tea have to go. And in a guided retreat, you are given precise instruction, and usually you have the opportunity to talk with a qualified teacher if any problems come up. So I would say Tibetan Buddhism or no Tibetan Buddhism, just start at the basis of what is the Buddha Dharma. And try to really work on the mind and on your understanding of what the Buddha taught, slowly, and not worry about it. If you have the karma, in time to find a teacher, you will find one. If you don't have the karma, you won't. It doesn't matter. You can find teachers all along the way as you need them. They will come. Namaste. I'm from the US and I have lived in India for 2 years now. Do you need a personal assistant? Oh. Well, Melanie, not right now, dear. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Right now, that's very kind of you. I'm sure Tushita could do with some help. But I have assistants, and so I don't right now. But it's very kind of you to offer. I appreciate that. Can you describe humility as a possible antidote to arrogance? Somebody described humility, they said, true humility is the absence of anyone to be proud. In other words, any ego to be proud, right? So that's true humility, when we're not thinking about ourselves at all. Of course it is it's the flip side of arrogance, naturally, but if we try to have humility, that's another form of pride. Oh, I'm ever so humble. True humility is when we're just not thinking about ourselves so much. And when the happiness and well-being of others just obviously seems more important. Then other people might see that as humility, but you're not even thinking about it. This is why beating oneself, flagellating oneself doesn't work. You can't flagellate the ego into becoming egoless. You just end up with a very hurt and dejected ego. That doesn't work. The ego has to dissolve. And that doesn't happen by beating it. It happens by making it, first of all, as I say, well-balanced and healthy, and then forgetting it because you're more interested in other people. You use the ego to serve others, and then gradually, of itself, it begins to dissolve. Otherwise, just trying to be humble won't work. Is there value in attaining the jhanas? Yes, of course, there is great value in attaining the jhanas. Jhanas or dhyanas in Sanskrit are those levels of mental absorption, of which altogether there are 8, the form jhanas and the formless jhanas, and they are increasingly rarefied levels of concentration, where the various factors which go together to allow ourselves to concentrate slowly fall apart until the mind becomes completely one with the object. And then in the formless jhanas, it's an expansion of consciousness, more and more rarefied. In the time of the Buddha, these were very much emphasized, and people apparently attained them very easily. The Buddha felt that they were an extremely useful, they make the mind, the point of all this is that we have to make the mind flexible and serviceable, workable, lesurumwa, right? It has to be like anything, if you've got a material that you're going to work with, like clay, you have to knead it and make it soft so that you can turn it into anything you want to turn it into. If it's hard and rigid, it won't work. So these jhanas, going into deeper and deeper levels of concentration, make the mind extremely flexible, extremely workable. When the Buddha, before he was a Buddha, when he was a bodhisattva and had just left the palace, he went to study with 2 teachers, traditionally. One teacher taught the first 4 form jhanas, and the Buddha got those very quickly. And then he went on to the next teacher who taught the 4 formal jhanas, in which the mind becomes very vast, radiant, covers the whole universe. I mean, many people describe these when mystics and people, that the mind expands and covers the whole universe and everything is filled with light and so forth. This is one of the arupa jhanas. And in the Buddha's day, his teacher thought that was liberation. But the Buddha thought, no, that's not liberation, because you come down again. So that's not it. And that's when he left his 2 teachers and went off by himself, and then tried doing extreme austerities. So, but the Buddha knew about all these jhanas, and he would go up and down them all the time. And so at least the first 4 Rupa jhanas were considered in his day to be very important before you went on to doing Vipassana. Nowadays, of course, it needs certain special conditions, including silence. And it needs also, I don't know, nowadays people's minds may be a little more busy than they used to be, more difficult. Because in his day, everybody seemed to get jhanas just like this. But there are teachers nowadays. There was a German nun called Ayakema. She was very much into teaching the jhanas. She said they're quite easy. And there is an Australian monk called Ajahn Brahm, who is extremely popular, especially in Asia, because he's very funny. And he teaches the jhanas. And he also said they're not so difficult. When you read the descriptions, it sounds like impossible. But he said, actually, it's really not difficult. If you once you get the idea, then you can go into the jhanas. And even, quite ordinary people can do it. And then the mind becomes very, very completely merged with the object of meditation. So the mind becomes very strong and very flexible at the same time. And with that kind of mind, then when we go on to Vipassana, then it's like Manjushri's sword. Very strong and powerful, cuts right through all the delusions. One of the reasons why people complain nowadays that even when they do Vipassana meditation for a long time, they get certain insights. They think, now I've really got it. And then they go back into their daily life and it all kind of dissipates again. And they say, well, obviously what the Buddha was talking about doesn't work because I haven't completely transformed. And other people who emphasize doing more shamatha before you do Vipassana, they say this is because, as I said, the foundation isn't strong enough. And that in the time of the Buddha, if you look in the sutras, you see that he always emphasized first doing strong shamatha, getting into the jhanas, then going on to Vipassana. And they say that once you've got the jhanas and your mind and the meditation subject are completely merged and just centered here, then if you do Vipassana, it really cuts through down here and it's not just stuck up in the head. So maybe this is true. The various samten. In fact, the word for concentration in Sanskrit is jhana, and in Tibetan is samten. And that means the jhanas. It doesn't just mean, concentrating for 2 minutes on your breath. It means being in the state of total mental absorption. So I would say if you can do it, and you can find a good teacher, and you have enough, they say it doesn't take that long, but if you can find a good teacher who can teach you how to go into the jhanas, I think it would be very well worth the effort to try. Because after that, it speeds up the process for everything else we want to do. Once the mind is workable, once the mind is flexible and serviceable, then any practice will very quickly come to fruition. as I said at the beginning. So yes, I think that more emphasis on the jhanas would probably be a good thing. Subject. Ooh. Situation of nuns in Tibetan Buddhism. Namaste. Could the Dalai Lama, if he wants to, change the opportunities for nuns? Did the situations for nuns become better since the movie Cave in the Snow? I don't think the movie Cave in the Snow had anything to do with it. But yes, the situation for nuns is vastly improved. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and His Holiness Karmapa, the Holiness Gyalwang Drukpa, and all the other holinesses, eminences, and very venerables have all been very, very encouraging about nuns. Nuns nowadays, from 20 years ago, you couldn't, it's black and white, really. The nuns still have a way to go, but they're going. And the level of education, the level of inner confidence, the level of capabilities is just extraordinary. And the lamas themselves have been extremely encouraging in this. They're not one that I can think of, well, one I can think of, but beyond him, apart from him, every other lama and geshe and khenpo has been very good. No names mentioned. Oh, is it in the film? Yes, it is, isn't it? Right, exactly. So apart from that, no, I mean, actually, I feel it's been extraordinarily encouraging how much the lamas and the monks have come forward to really help the nuns to improve their situation in all ways. They have, apart from the bhikshuni issue of full ordination, the nuns still only receive a novice ordination. They do not receive full ordination. That has received a lot of resistance. It's been really quite interesting to watch how much resistance there is, unspoken but very real, to the nuns getting their full ordination. But apart from that, and we're working on that too, it will happen, as long as the nuns themselves want it. I think the next step is for the nuns themselves to want it, otherwise it's not going to happen. Okay, girls, do you do that? So you have to want to be Gelongma, right? But in the meantime, nuns are now, they're getting the full study program. They're becoming geshes, they will become khenmos, they are in long-term retreats. The nunneries now are very well run. The nuns are becoming, the main problem for nuns has always been a low self-esteem and lack of self-confidence, because there were always that message being given them that they're inferior. And so now, gradually, the lamas don't dare tell them they're inferior anymore. They're always telling them we all have Buddha nature is not male or female. And if now you have chances, before we're very sorry that we overlooked you for several centuries. But now we know you're there, and we apologize, and now we're going to see that you get all the education and opportunities that you need to recognize, to realize your potential, intellectually, spiritually. And so nowadays things are